So there is a story right now that is making the headlines, and that is on this shooting that just took place in Denver. A right-wing protester was shot and killed. And right-wingers on Twitter are saying that this guy was killed by an Antifa sympathizer or an Antifa activist. So what happened in Denver was you had a bunch of Antifa, Black Lives Matter activists getting together for some sort of a soup drive. In fact, they called their rally the Antifa, I think it's something like Antifa BLM soup drive. I don't know if soup was ever served though, but I do know that someone actually died. There was a right-wing counter-protest that took place, and I think they labeled themselves as being a part of a patriot rally. There was a shouting match that took place between a Black Lives Matter activist and a right-wing activist. And they start yelling at each other and all that. In the background, something else took place. There was a verbal altercation between two people, and one of the men pulled out a pistol and shot the other guy, and the guy later died. It turned out that the one who shot the guy was actually a private security guard who was hired by News 9, which is the local news station in Denver, Colorado. It also turned out that the news station, News 9, confirmed, saying, yeah, we actually hire private security guards to protect staff when they are covering protests, because there were staff members from the news agency who was in the protest. They were covering the protest and all that. So they need security. You know, you're in a protest, it can get pretty wild sometimes. So they hired a private security guard, and this private security guard shot somebody. Now, there are people saying that this private security guard was Antifa, or that he sympathized with the Antifa protesters or the BLM protesters. And then, of course, you have people on Twitter who are trying to make this out to be proof that Joe Biden is wrong, that Antifa is just an idea. You see, Biden, Antifa's not an idea, it's a movement. Why isn't the FBI covering Antifa? Look, a murder just happened. A right-winger was just executed in the middle of a demonstration. Can you believe this? And it's not as simple as that, or it's not as black and white as that. You have a private security guard who was hired to protect staff working for News 9. They were there covering the protest, and somebody got shot. Now, there is a number of photos that really do reveal more so of what took place in this situation. You have one photo where the right-winger is laying hands on the security guard. And then there is another photo of the right-winger spraying mace on the security guard. The security guard then subsequently pulls out his pistol and shoots the guy. Now, when you spray mace on someone, that is a violent act. If you shoot someone who starts spraying mace on you, that is more than likely a self-defense situation. It's like that Gerard Brooks guy. He stole the taser from the police officer. The cops were chasing after him. Brooks fires the taser towards the officers. Officer shoots Rayshard Brooks in self-defense. Now, you had the left-wingers saying, oh, that was not self-defense, a taser isn't a deadly weapon, but it is a deadly weapon, because when you shoot someone with a taser, you incapacitate them, they're on the floor, you can then take their weapon and you can kill that person. So the cops were absolutely within their right to shoot and kill Brooks. The same thing with Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse was in Kenosha. There were protests taking place, and some left-wing fanatics charged him, and he shot them. Now, the left-wingers were trying to paint Rittenhouse as a murderer. Right-wingers defended Rittenhouse and said, no, Rittenhouse did self-defense. That was an act of self-defense. And they're right. Like, you can't really say that Kyle Rittenhouse is this evil terrorist murderer. What he did was self-defense. Now, you can sit here and argue, well, he shouldn't have been there, but that's irrelevant in this sort of context. The fact is, Kyle Rittenhouse, what he did was self-defense. He was within his right to defend himself in that situation. The only thing that they're trying to get Kyle Rittenhouse on is that he was 17 years old, and it's possible that he wasn't allowed to carry a weapon at that age. Now, I wish right-wingers were as careful in publishing their opinions as they were with these particular situations with Rittenhouse and Mr. Brooks. I wish the right-wingers were as careful in this particular story as they were with the stories regarding Brooks and Rittenhouse. Because, yes, a right-winger was killed. But you have to look at the details surrounding the story before you start making emphatic declarations about how this was a left-wing terrorist act or how this was a murder of a right-winger done by a left-wing fanatic. You have to factor in the details. The fact that this guy was a security guard hired by News 9 to protect news staff. The fact that the guy used a mace on the security guard before the security guard shot him. More than likely, this is going to be concluded as an act of self-defense. I say more than likely because in some strange instance, some sort of new information could pop up evincing otherwise. But from what I have seen so far, more than likely this is going to be concluded as an act of self-defense. There are people saying, well, what this guy did was murder. And if you guys are going to say this is murder, you're just like the left-wingers who automatically jump to conclusions when they hear about a cop killing a black guy. This was a racist, lynching, murder, etc., etc. Looking at this story, more than likely this is going to be concluded as an act of self-defense. Yeah, bottom line. So those are my thoughts on the subject. Another thing before I forget, the fact that this guy was a security guard really tells me that I don't think he was there to cause problems. He was there to do a job, which was to protect news staff. He wasn't there to get involved in the political action of the demonstration. Now, authorities have already concluded that this guy actually wasn't Antifa. So that leads me to lean on the side that says the right-winger was an agitator, he was being aggressive, and when you use mace on someone and they have a gun, if they shoot you, it's going to be established as a situation in which self-defense was utilized. Anyway, those are my thoughts. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.